Welcome to This Explainer. Tonight, we're opening up a particularly dark and, honestly, deeply unsettling case file. It's the kind of narrative that completely strips away the safety of the world we think we know and just plunges us straight into the unknown. We're looking at the chilling source material surrounding an entity known to authorities only as the Smiling Butcher. So you might want to make sure your doors are locked for this one, because we're about to unpack exactly why the details of this investigation absolutely haunt anyone who reads them.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to put yourself right there in the terrifying sensory scenario established by our source text. It's late, you're walking home alone, the streets are entirely empty, just streetlights casting those long, distorted shadows across the pavement. Just pay close attention to your senses for a second. What do you expect to hear? Hmm, maybe the crunch of your own footsteps, the distant hum of a car engine, wind rattling a loose fence. In an isolated setting like that, your brain is instinctively hardwired to listen for the sound of a threat. You're literally listening for heavy boots approaching rapidly, or the sound of breaking glass, maybe a sudden aggressive shout. But what if the threat doesn't sound like a threat at all? What if it sounds like joy?
Then, breaking the dead silence of the night, you hear laughter right behind you. Our source material really hinges on this incredibly unsettling detail. Think about why this taps so deeply into our primal fear. Laughter is supposed to be the ultimate expression of happiness, right? Of human connection, of absolute safety. It's the sound of a gathering, of friends, of warmth. But here, that joy is entirely subverted. Out of the darkness, where there should literally only be quiet and isolation, a cheerful sound becomes an immediate, terrifying signal of absolute danger. It weaponizes something completely innocent against you, and it just freezes you in your tracks with this overwhelming sense of wrongness.
That brings us to our next focus, Section 2, the modus operandi, profiling the killer. So the crucial point here is the official name the authorities actually assigned to this phantom, the Smiling Butcher. Now, police rarely hand out monikers lightly, and they almost never use ones this theatrical unless the evidence absolutely demands it. A name like this serves a highly specific purpose. It categorizes the terrifying psychological profile of the suspect they were hunting. The juxtaposition of smiling and butcher perfectly encapsulates the sheer horror present in the source text. I mean, a butcher implies methodical, gruesome, and highly destructive work. But the smile? That signifies a twisted pleasure. Or maybe even worse, a complete, chilling detachment from the horrific acts being committed. And the sheer silence of this killer's approach is really what makes the MO so profoundly disturbing. There were no warning signs, no chaotic scuffles, and, most frighteningly of all, no screams. When we analyze true crime scenarios, we expect the typical horror cues, right? A desperate struggle, a loud cry for help, something that indicates a fight for survival. But the absolute absence of screams? That means the victims were taken entirely by surprise. They were incapacitated instantly, before their brains could even process the danger they were in. The only acoustic signature left in the void, the only lingering evidence of the encounter, was that singular, eerie laugh echoing through the darkness. Let's look at the consistency of the witness accounts. Treating this like a formal police deposition, the investigative records clearly state witnesses claimed every victim heard cheerful laughter just moments before disappearing. Now, what's really interesting about this specific detail is the timeline it establishes, and that jarring contrast between a sound of pure cheer and the immediate, permanent vanishing of a human being. It means the laughter wasn't some post-crime celebration. It wasn't the sound of an escape. It was the mechanism of the ambush itself. It was literally the very last thing these missing people ever experienced before they were just gone.
Let's move on to the physical investigation, Section 3, the House of Smiles, the crime scene.
Stepping into the physical evidence uncovered at his abandoned location, were met with a horrific irony. When police finally breached the suspect's house, they were obviously expecting to find the victims, or at least some concrete answers, but they found this completely split reality instead, and this brilliantly illustrates the true terror of the case. On one hand, the walls were meticulously covered with smiling faces. It was an obsessive physical manifestation of that eerie laughter. Drawings, photographs, clippings, all just staring back at the investigators. But on the flip side of this investigation, nothing. Absolutely no trace of the missing people whatsoever. No bodies, no identifying items, zero forensic clues to piece together their final moments. Just a mocking gallery of smiles, looking down on an entirely empty crime scene, offering absolutely zero closure.
Which leads us into our final section, Section 4, the unresolved threat.
So why does this cold case remain open, and why does it continue to tap into our deepest fears of the dark? Well, because the terrifying reality of a cold case is that the danger isn't locked away in a cell somewhere, it's still out there. The source text explicitly states this chilling fact. To this day, some believe the laughter never stopped. Without a body, without a suspect in custody, the mythology of the smiling butcher bleeds seamlessly into reality. It means the presence was never truly contained. That eerie, cheerful sound is just left to drift endlessly through the collective imagination, a lingering threat always waiting right there in the periphery.
Which brings us directly to you. The source material leaves us with a highly specific final warning that bridges the gap between this dark investigation and your everyday life. So I just have to ask, if you are ever walking alone at night, the streets are dead quiet, the shadows are long, and suddenly someone starts laughing right behind you, will you turn around, or will you heed the warning of the smiling butcher and just keep walking? Thank you so much for exploring this case file with me today. Stay safe out there.